Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. Hi, it's Julie Henriquez, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I'm delighted to welcome Darlene Dziomba to the podcast this week. Darlene combined her passion for the written word and animals into the Lily Dreyfus series. The books are written based on her experience as a volunteer at the Animal Welfare Association, a no-kill animal shelter in Voorhees, New Jersey. Darlene had a 35-year career in finance at the University of Pennsylvania, which aids her in crafting quirky characters. She's a member of Sisters in Crime, the Manuscript Swap Coordinator for the Guppies, and served as a mentor in the Sisters in Crime Mentorship pilot program. She lives in New Jersey with her four-legged best friend, Billie. Darlene, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm delighted that we're going to have a conversation and about writing, about Guppies, about all sorts of things. But let's start where I always start. When did you say to yourself, I want to write a book?
So I have always been a reader. I've read lots of mysteries, and I started going to BoucherCon because people in my book group were like, have you never been to this conference? It's the best place to discover new mystery writers. And I met a friend at BoucherCon Indianapolis, and this became our girls' weekend. We would go to BoucherCon every year, whatever city, and we would hang out, meet authors, pick up new books. And so we were in BoucherCon Toronto, and I was listening to a panel that had protagonists that all had dog-related careers. They were dog sitter, dog walker, dog groomer. And in the craziest moment, I said, you know what I've never read? I've never read a book where the protagonist worked in an animal shelter. I should write that. And so I got together with my friend for lunch, and I said, Michelle, I think I'm going to write a book. And she kind of gave me the side eye and said, oh, okay, sure you're going to write a book. But it was such a creative idea that I had never read that I just said to myself, I have to try this. I have to see if I can write a book and get it out and let the world know more about what goes on behind the kennels of an animal shelter.
I love that. I mean, and I think a lot of people listening to this podcast, certainly a lot of folks who read cozy mysteries, animals are such an important part of that genre. And you're right, that's not the normal job of a protagonist.
Right.
So this character, you wanted the volunteer. How did you flesh this character out and then sort of start creating the world that you knew because you were a volunteer, but you got to write a world that a reader's going to be able to be involved in?
So I sort of started with my protagonist, Lily, having two dogs that I crafted after my Beagle Basset Hound mix Tug, who's no longer with us, and my lovely Terrier mix Billie, who has a lot of enthusiasm. You just heard her shaking in the background. Thanks, Bill. So I started kind of with Lily's life and where is she, and built her up as a character and what I wanted her to do. And then I just started to think about how to plot out, like, what would make a compelling story. And so, you have to draw Lily in right away. She's not an amateur sleuth. She doesn't do this for a living. So I had her boyfriend be found dead so that she would have to be pulled into the mystery.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of cascaded along from there. Like, okay, now I need to figure out, well, who killed him and why? And what's his backstory? And it was just a bunch of layers on top of layers until I finally got through and had like a full, complete, workable mystery.
So you were a voracious reader before, which of course is enormously helpful when you're trying to figure out how to write it, because you know the theory behind this is why this works. But to actually write a novel, and especially that first one, how did you develop the craft? How did you, how did you sort of figure out how to do it?
So a couple of things. First, Sisters in Crime was so immensely helpful because there are so many classes and webinars and podcasts to listen to and learn about the craft and how people are doing it. So I took just about every class that was offered.
Mm-hmm.
And in my town, we have an independent bookstore that was having a writer's workshop. So I applied to be part of the writer's workshop. And I don't know if you know Liz Moore. She's written a lot of books, but Liz Moore was the instructor. And I was the last person she let into the workshop. And it was really helpful for me to have other writers read my work and give me feedback on it. And Liz was really a great mentor in like how to make the book more fulfilling and, much more readable. So that's really how I got my start.
Well, Darlene, I think that it's, as people will have a career where they've got, some success and they know what they're doing and this, and then, they'll decide to write a book, and it's humbling that it's all perfect in your brain. I mean, it makes so much sense and everything's great. And then there's something between the brain and the hand that it just gets stuck. And so being willing to go to a workshop and be vulnerable enough to say, I'm figuring this out, help me do that. That takes some courage. How did you, was this just a no-brainer for you, or did you have to talk yourself into this as you're figuring it out?
So for me, being part of the writer's workshop, I thought, well, this is going to be an incredible opportunity for me to get feedback and learn a little bit more about the craft. And it hadn't occurred to me at first that I was going to have to submit a writing sample. And so I had said to Liz, I said, I've only ever tried to write one book. This is all I have. Like, I'm a one-hit wonder right now. Can I submit the same thing that I did in the application for the class? And she said, sure, no problem. And then it came time to have people sign up for what week they were going to be the one critiqued. And of course, I was the last person in the class. So I was the first person getting critiqued because no one wanted the first night. No one. They were like, oh, I'm not taking this. So we get there the first night and everybody's telling me how brave I am to go first. And I said, oh, believe me, if some position was on offer other than first, I would have taken that. So it was a big leap of faith, and it took a lot of courage. And I'm an introvert. I don't really like being front and center. So that was petrifying to me to have my work front and center in front of 10 strangers. Yes. But I did it, and I'm here to tell the story about it.
And was that, I think that also, was it a mystery only, or were all kinds of genres in that class?
It was all genres.
So that's interesting as well.
Yes, it's interesting to hear the take from people who write something else on a mystery. Because the mysteries have lots of tropes that you're trying to capture. And if that's not what you write, you're not really looking for it.
Right. I think also super helpful to understand the tropes of other genres because, and there's subgenres certainly within them all, but, like romance, you have to have the happily ever after. I mean, there's a good reason for these tropes. And I don't say that, I don't use that word with disdain at all. It's like you have to understand the rules of the road when you're writing these things. So you would say your books are cozies. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
So with cozies, there's extra rules of the road. I mean, and there's all kinds of cozies, and there are darker cozies, and there are cozy horrors, and all kinds of things. But amongst the rules are, justice prevails. The community is super important. The characters are important, and no harm can come to an animal. I mean,
absolutely not.
Absolutely, not even perceived harm. Like there's no harm to animals, and that's the rule that you have to follow. So within that, and writing in a shelter, you're telling stories, but it's also shelter stories can be tough sometimes. How did you balance that? as you were doing things?
So the fact that shelter stories can be tough actually helps raise people's compassion for animals, because especially in Clues from the Canines, I had a cat that was suffering from IBS. And so Lily and the vet are having lots of conversations about what to do for this poor cat, because no one's going to adopt a cat with IBS. They see what the kennel looks like and they're like, don't want that in my house. And again, and the animal's suffering. So they want to fix those things. So I kind of use it as a way to raise compassion and see what some of the challenges are when you're dealing with animals.
Yeah. Yeah. And they become, especially for the protagonist, animals become an additional character to the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing cozy readers love is the puzzle, is really figuring out the plot. So as you're writing that first book, you've been a reader, so you knew the plots that didn't work for you. But how was it for you to have to plot a mystery and sort of have it make sense?
It was hard. Don't take this lightly. We might write cozy, but it is hard work to do it. And I'm a plotter, which is good, because I have to figure things out as each day is going along. But it gets really hard to make sure you tie all the ends off and make sure all the pieces meet in the middle and you have a right handoff. I have an alpha reader who reads everything I write before it goes to anyone else. And she says, you just assume your readers are smarter than they are, Darlene. Your clues are too subtle. So
that's such great feedback, though, right?
It is. Because I can't stand it when a writer makes the clues too obvious. So I'm trying not to do that, but I'm kind of overcompensating.
Yeah. And let's talk about, I'm just going to keep rewinding and talking about what you're talking about. You're a plotter. I've talked to so many folks on this podcast, and one message that we all want to get out there is there's no one way to write. So, and also as a writer, sometimes it evolves over time. You may start one thing and you do something differently and everything like. Were you always a plotter, or was that what you developed in order to get the books written?
I think being a plotter just came naturally to me. So I'm a little on the anal retentive side. And I was a finance person, and finance people like things that are very ordered, and structured. So when I set out writing, on the wall behind me, I had a piece of paper for every day in the story. And I would write down what was going to happen on that day, and have Post-it notes with arrows going back and forth, but there always was a plot and the roadmap for me to follow. I don't know how people pants. I really admire them, because I couldn't do it.
And, there's mixtures of, I do know some true pantsers who literally will just have an idea, something, and then they go. But I'm with you. I think that's a very hard way to do it. But I love this idea of saying to yourself, this book is going to take place over 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have 10 sheets of paper. And then, you start writing and putting Post-its up, and you can say, well, it's not possible that all that could happen on Wednesday. So this is going to be 11 days or... Right?
Right.
That's because timelines, and also you can fix your timeline before you start, because timelines can be really tricky.
And trying to keep the days consistent. So you don't want all of your action. You don't want 100 pages devoted to one day and then 10 pages for the other 6 days. You really need to learn how to do that peanut butter spread,
Yeah. And not most, but a lot of times in cozies, if they don't jump ahead 3 weeks, in real life they would. But in cozies, miraculously the results from the test come back the next day, or, something happens or a clue shows up, because the compressed timeline adds to the tension. It also just helps create why the amateur sleuth is involved is
Yes.
because they need to outpace or figure out what happened. And you also need to build a community. So as you started out on this, you had your idea for your protagonist, but did you have an idea for the extra characters who sometimes take over a series?
So I have a lot of very interesting friends, and Lily's sidekicks all have character traits from some of my friends, and some of them enjoy those, and some scratch their head and say, like, who's that person? So I fortunately had character traits to draw upon that made for good kind of quirky, cozy characters. And I know a lot of people think, oh, you write the protagonist for you, but Lily is really not me. The character that I wrote for me is Lily's best friend, who has no filter and things just kind of fall out of her mouth that everybody else would say, don't say that out loud, you know. Because I think you need a person like that in life, but not your protagonist.
So I love that. So you started, you took this workshop. When did you join Sisters in Crime on this journey? Did you know about Sisters in Crime before you started writing?
I did know about Sisters in Crime because I had attended so many voucher cons. I always passed by the table and usually swiped some candy off of it. I think I joined Sisters in Crime. So I started writing in 2017. Okay. I think I joined Sisters in Crime in 2018.
Great.
Yeah.
And you, the Guppies are a chapter of Sisters in Crime, an online chapter. Used to be called the Great Unpublished. I mean, now people who are well published are still members of the Guppies, but it's a really vibrant community of folks who are learning and mentoring and teaching and, doing a lot of things. Did finding that community help as you were working?
Oh, that community is amazing. And it is kind of a joke that it was once called the Great Unpublished, because I think once you become a Guppy, you're a Guppy for life. No one ever seems to leave the Guppies. And every now and then a new person will be like, wait a minute, who are all these people that are so well published? I thought this was for the unpublished people. But that community is amazing because there are so many people with talent and skills, and they are willing to share them and to help mentor other authors and help them through that process. A really amazing group of people.
And you are the manuscript coordinator
Yes.
for the Guppies. So that's one of the things that Guppies will offer is manuscript swaps.
Yep.
And setting up the expectations for the swap. But also, that's not a small task to take on, Darlene.
Well, what's most difficult about the task is getting people who match each other at the same time, because you may get someone who writes horror and you have 2-3 cozy writers who will say, I'll read anything but horror. So you're kind of like, okay, I got to get another horror person in here somewhere, So that is what makes it challenging. It's just the timing of it. There have been a few that have worked out perfectly. Like I get 4 manuscripts in and I can see 2 pairs instantly. And great, this worked. But sometimes, you do have to tell people, please be patient. And thankfully, thus far, is there some wood I can knock on? Thus far, people have been very patient with, I understand you only have so much to work with and you'll offer me what's available. So.
Right. Because you want to make sure it's a good match.
Exactly.
And you talked about your alpha reader, and this is, it's the same conversation, and you were a mentor in the mentorship program for Sisters in Crime. How feedback, I already started to tell you how brave you were to join a workshop and go in the first week. I mean, my stomach lurched when I heard you say that, but putting your work out there is vulnerable. It really is. But getting bad feedback can be very harmful depending on who it's from and how it's delivered and where you are in taking it. You know, after you've been writing for a while, you know how to separate the good from the bad and what to ignore.
Right.
But at the beginning, it's like, oh, you know, I obviously need to rewrite this entire book from another point of view in present tense. It's like, no, you may, maybe, but no.
I was very lucky that I was introduced to my alpha reader, who is an incredibly tactful woman and gives feedback in a way that is, it's a critique, but it also kind of gives you examples of how to apply it. And so she's really good at this. And so that's great. But feedback is hard because, you know, sometimes people will say to you, oh, your pacing is all off. It's way too fast. And you're like, but this is, you know, I'm writing a suspense section. I want it to be fast. I want the reader to have that anxiety, you know? So it's definitely hard balancing out people's feedback.
And sometimes you have to just listen because they may be making a point and you may be getting defensive, but they may be right. I mean, it's like, all right, just take it in, separate what's helpful, what isn't. And if something is still, you're thinking about it a couple of days later, it's like, oh, maybe they were right. I need to try that.
Right. And sometimes you just have to read the feedback 2 days later when you're not so emotionally attached to it to understand what they're really trying to tell you, you know.
And you talked about an alpha reader. Let's talk about the different kinds of readers, because that's something that's a gift to a writer, are good readers who you trust. And, you know, we all have them, and some of them are very short lists of people, like one.
Exactly.
But the alpha reader will read when you're you're not even sure it's a book yet. I mean, they're willing to just take your draft, your rough draft, or your, you know, second draft and say, this is working, this isn't, you know, and that's the feedback.
Right.
And when you reach out to your alpha reader, because again, that's a skill, because you don't want your reader to tell you to rewrite the book for you.
Right.
But they also need to say, I didn't understand this, or whatever. Do you give this person questions when you send out the manuscript, so you could say, you know, did XYZ make sense? Did you like this person? Were you surprised when this happened? So that you can sort of get feedback that's going to help you?
So I ask her for top level feedback. Is it a complete story?
Yeah.
Did the mystery make sense? You know, was it realistic? And then I say, underneath of that, you know, tell me how you felt about the characters. Did you like the characters? And it's funny because in my Lily Dreyfus series, there's a character she hates. And every time she gives me feedback, it's like, I don't understand why you have Chelsea doing this, and the way she talks. And I'm like, you need to get over that, because this is 5 books now. I'm on book 5. This is how this character behaves, you know? So yes, and it's really good because from her top level feedback, then I'll have questions like, okay, I understand that, you know, this piece didn't work for you, but now tell me why. Did I not give enough detail in it? Was it just not realistic? And so, yeah, for me, the writer, I really have to come up with targeted questions to help my alpha reader to give me feedback.
Yeah. And be open to the answers.
Yes. Yes.
And then do you use that same alpha reader when you've got a draft that you're, you know, almost ready to go out with, or do you have another reader for that phase?
So I use her. She's the first person who reads everything, and depending on the level of feedback I get, she'll either read a second version of that, or I have 2 other people who read for me, who get things that are almost finished, but I need somebody to catch the weird things that I just miss in reading. So, I was describing a dog bed and said it looked like a large sofa. And my friend said, they're carrying that. No one can carry a large sofa. Make it a small sofa and it fits. But, to me, I was like, well, a dog bed looks like a large sofa because, a German Shepherd's going to sleep on it. But so I have like beta readers to help me with those things.
And it is interesting because as a writer, again, in your brain, it all makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But you cut that scene and all of a sudden something doesn't make sense at all and somebody will catch it. And that's critical.
It really is. Yeah. It's also critical for people to catch the things that are just fluff. Because I've had scenes that I thought were really important. And the beta reader will be like, yeah, this was boring. Why did you even have this in there? And I was like, but this connects these two things. And they're like, I made the connection without that. So, yeah, so it is. I really appreciate those people who read for me.
And the editing part, and we have some wonderful webinars in the webinar library, but it's exactly that, going through scene by scene and saying, how can I make the scene better? And also, does it need to exist?
Right.
Do I need this moment in this book? And if not, thankfully, because of computers, we can save things as opposed to tear up the pages and dramatically throw them over your shoulder. Now, you've written 5 books in this series?
I have, yes.
And are you continuing, or is there another series you're thinking about? Tell me how you're evolving as a writer.
So I've written 5 books in this series, and what will come out in book 5 is there are a lot of things in Lily's life that have been tumultuous, and there are things that she needs to change. One of the big things that needs to change is she started dating this man who said, like, we've been dating 9 months. We need to move in together because, I'm 40 years old. I don't want to just date. So I have to figure out how I'm going to craft this, keep the series going, but change Lily's life in a dramatic way. So I'm working on that. I've got a little blockage. I know I need to work on that. But I've been working on a suspense novel because I have this great story about friends who go on vacation and things do not turn out as you expect them to. And so I've been working on this suspense novel as well. And I'm on my 3rd rewrite. So we'll see how that goes. But I really love the story and I've gotten really into these characters. So I hopefully that suspense novel will get published at some point.
And so this is one of the things I love about writers is they don't make it easy on themselves. Okay, so I'm going to write in a completely different genre and I'm going to, really make life much more challenging and, not have this cozy community to fall back on and raise the stakes. And it's going to be super hard and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Right. Exactly. That sums it up. Yes.
Yeah. And how is that for you? Is it 3rd rewrite, which is very normal as you're figuring stuff out and really you want it to be new. So you gotta figure that out. But are you enjoying the process?
I am enjoying the process. And it's been really interesting to flesh these characters out and understand their motivations and what's driving them. The first rewrite of the book, I actually changed the villain. So that was really interesting to rewrite the book and have a new villain and have the person who had been the villain be like this unsuspecting character that things are happening to. So yes, it was an experience, like fleshing this out.
So did you plot this one as well?
Oh, yes.
So then you have a new villain. So did you replot or
Yes.
before you started the new draft?
Yeah, I replotted the entire book and then started I was able to keep some of the chapters. Some of the things I was able to keep, but a lot of that original book, I'm going to say about 70% of it is gone. And now I have a new book that I think is better, and replot it, recraft it.
This is not on video. At some point, we may do these podcasts on video as well. But I watched Darlene's face as she said, I replotted, and just the flash of pain of, you've got 300 pages and you're keeping 60. I mean, it's just like, wow. Yeah. But that's part of the process.
It is. It really is part of the process.
And so, as writing and publishing are two different journeys. For folks listening to this who have been going to conferences as you do, I love that you were a fan first. I just love that you were a really big fan. I mean, going to BoucherCon every year is super fandom. But then, deciding I'm going to write this, what would you suggest for folks who have that dream but may not stick with it? Because it is harder than you think it's going to be.
Yes. I think what people need to set a goal for themselves as to why they're writing and what it is they want to achieve with it. And if your goal is just, I thought it would be cool to write a book, well, then you may not want to stick with it. But for me, my goal really was, I wanted to get that behind the kennel scene out in front of people so they could understand what was going on. And I think that kept me motivated to keep writing. And then I was querying agents. I thought I would try to go the traditional route. And, if you ever want to beat your head against a brick wall and see how it feels, query agents for a while and you'll really understand the frustration. And I had to sit myself down and have a very serious conversation with myself about what was it I really wanted about the book. And I said, you know what I want? More than anything, what I want is my parents to hold a book in their hand that has my name on it. Mm-hmm. And I was in my late 50s, which meant my parents were in their late 80s. I didn't have 20 years to find a publisher that would say, hey, this is a great idea. You're right. Let's sell these books. So I decided I'm going to self-publish. But that was because it met the goal I wanted to meet, which was to have my parents hold that book. And the fact that they've now writer, I need to learn my verb tenses, right? The fact that they have held 5 books in their hands is just amazing to me and them.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to highlight that, sit down with yourself and decide what your goals are, not what people tell you your goals should be, or what your, partner tells you your goals should be, or anyone else. What are your goals as a writer? And then go for it.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's also lovely that you wanted, that goal for your folks. That's a very tangible goal of, I want them to hold a good book in their hands, so I'm going to make it a good book. Right. But I want them to have that experience. I mentioned early on that animal cozies are an incredibly popular niche. Do you find that, when you talk to folks, or I'm sure, the shelter that you volunteer with is super excited about it. I mean, is this sort of a shared language of, you meet other dog owners or pet owners, and then you can say, hey, and by the way.
Well, what's nice was when I go to book festivals, especially outdoor events, people always come with their dogs. And dogs are naturally attracted to me, which is awesome. So the dog will pull them over and I'll be like, oh, let me pet your dog. And while you're standing here, let me tell you about my book series. So, yeah. And I will say that helps bring some people in, but It's not the major selling point. I have to say, like, just the fact that they're dogs and it's a rescue organization, I thought that was going to be a huge, like, publicity point for me. And it really isn't. Like, that isn't where people go with these books. But yes, having dogs in them really does help because the covers have dogs on them, so people are attracted to that. I do get a lot of questions like, oh, so they're children's books. And I'm like, oh, no, they're written for adults.
No.
We like dogs too, you know.
Well, and when you talk about, from the beginning, you said I'm an introvert, but part of being a writer or a published author, I mean, again, there's a difference. Being a published author is that you need to sell your book. And that takes practice, and that also, you've got to breathe and figure it out. But once you do it for a while, it becomes part of what you do. You're not just saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. But if it comes up in conversation, you're going to tell them about your book.
Right. Oh, I always have business cards in my purse. You should see where I pass those things out. Grocery store, dry cleaner. I'm talking about my book and passing out business cards.
Yeah, or have bookmarks, whatever. I think it's so, there's every opportunity because a book sale is a book sale, and word of mouth is the best way to get book sales. And you can do ads, you could do a million different things, but it's word of mouth that helps sell. And so I love that you're sort of after 5 because it's a nice arc, a nice series arc. You're taking a second to say, what's next? And, thinking about what are the next 5 books? What's the story or what's the change or what's going to happen? So that you can do this. Are there other writing challenges that you put in for yourself that you'd like to try and figure out?
So I really have difficulty writing in past tense. And I know that a lot of mystery writers, this is feedback I've gotten from a lot of mystery writers is, why do you write in present tense? That's so jarring and so unnatural. But for me, that is what's natural. So when I craft the next cozy series, I'm going to really try to write it in past tense so that I can fit that market of people who are looking for that. People who like reading in present tense think my books are awesome. They're like, no, we like present tense. And I like it because I like being in the moment.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of like the story is happening while I'm reading it. So past tense is so hard. And that is the challenge I have set for myself, to try to figure out how to write in past tense.
Is your suspense novel in present tense as well?
Yes.
I used to think I didn't like reading present tense, and then I realized I was reading books in present tense, and I didn't notice because I was involved. So I don't know that most readers notice as much, but I do think as a writer, it definitely, you have to tell the story differently when it's in present tense.
Yes.
You can't have reflective moments unless it's remembering a long ago memory. It's more, I think it's more challenging, but this is why, right? Everybody does this differently.
Exactly.
And you also, when writing a new series, and again, you were a voracious reader so that you could pick up on this, but sometimes when you're writing your first series, you create obstacles, like you rush a relationship, or you have somebody, or you don't flesh this out, and it's like, oh, if I could do this again, I would not have had her dating him, or I wouldn't have killed off the boyfriend in the first one or something.
Right.
But in the second series, you can learn from that and say, okay, we're going to slow this part down, we're going to speed this up, and we're going to do that. Do you find that there are times that you're like, if I could rewind this, I would do this differently?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are things that I would do differently. Yes.
Because you're creating a world, and readers it will take you years to write the 5 books, but readers may read them in a couple of weeks, all back to back, and they will notice and they will let you know if there's an issue or whatever, or something doesn't make sense.
Yes, I have some friends who belong to fan groups, and they'll tell me things that people have posted, like to the fan group listserv, about how is there suddenly this chair in the living room? It's never been there before. And I'm like, holy moly. Really? You get that detail in your head?
Can you imagine as a writer? I mean, you keep track of a lot of things, but furniture placement is not one of them. But as a reader, if I find a series I fall in love with, I will binge that series, and you notice things like, oh, that was a different name in the first book.
Right.
On book 15, it was a different name. Well, of course it was. It's book 15.
Right.
They only mentioned a cousin twice.
Right, exactly.
So, member of Guppies, member of Sisters in Crime, writing these books, writing suspense. Let's just leave this on another, another note of, we talked about encouraging people to write that book, but let's talk about how to encourage them to learn how the craft, and what that takes, and maybe encourage people to figure out ways of doing that. Do you think that, that workshop that you took fairly early on was as helpful as it might have been if you'd waited for a while longer?
For me, it was really helpful because it helped guide me to craft a better story. So for me, hitting a writer's workshop right as I was beginning was good. I think for a lot of people, it might have been better in like midway because they were entrenched in the story and probably had done more character development than I had done. So they would have gotten more varied feedback. But for me, it was perfect timing.
And when you're doing a workshop like that, you're also talking about structure. And mystery structure is actually a little, I'm not going to say easier, but it's definitely the 4 acts, there are beats because you're building tension and everything else, but every story has structure. And so figuring out what structure works for you and for your book is also important.
Yes.
You're figuring that out.
Yes.
Do you find that as you've written more, you're learning more about all of these things like structure and tense and things that you just sort of assumed?
Definitely. The most funny question that I get is, oh, is it easier with each book? And I'm like, no, with each book it's harder because with each book I've learned things that I shouldn't have done the first time around.
Yeah. Yes. And you make it harder on yourself.
You do. Yes.
And
what is this human condition, right? We should be trying to figure out how to make it easier on ourselves, but not writers. We always want to up the bar.
I know.
And that's up a little bit. I want to jump higher.
So are you enjoying going to conferences as much now that you're a writer as well as you did as a fan, because the inside baseball stuff?
I like them even more now because, I've started to refer to BoucherCon as summer camp for middle-aged women because I feel like, oh, I'm getting to see all my friends for a week in a new city. And it's so nice to be able to go to these conferences and meet people who you've only seen online or you've only seen their posts and you're like, oh my gosh, you're Julie. I've been reading your posts.
Right. And you don't expect, because we see each other sometimes on Zoom, and it's like, oh, wait, you're tall. I didn't know that you were going to be tall.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's like the 3D effect. Well, thank you for being part of the community and for the work you're doing with Guppies and everything else. And congratulations on the series. And good luck with the suspense. I love that you're challenging yourself and that you rewrote. Let's she's written 5 books, folks, and she's rewriting most of a book and now on a 3rd draft. I think that that's incredibly valuable for people to hear as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Darlene, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much. Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.